Hey everybody, Rob with WePayOffDebt.ca coming at you to address the question, Rob, I've got some cash sitting in my account. What do I do with it? Now, before I get into that, please go ahead and like this channel, subscribe if you haven't already, comment down below. I would love to hear if you have ideas for future episodes. But for this episode in particular, I've got a special freebie to go with it. I've got a list of things that you could actually invest your money into that are pretty small, but in the grand scheme of things could have a massive effect on your future financial life. So go ahead and head over to WePayOffDebt.ca/cash to get that free checklist. Okay, so with that, let's jump into the topic. So the question is, if I have extra cash sitting in my bank account, what do I do with it? Well, the first thing is, of course, there's no one right answer. It depends on where you're at. So let's start with that. Where are you on the baby steps? If, for instance, you've never heard of them, you've never started them, let's walk through them. Are you at baby step 1? Now, baby step 1 would be somebody who has no emergency savings or less than $1,000 of emergency savings. If you're there, then I would take as much money as you can from that chunk of cash you have sitting there, up to $1,000, and put that aside and call that your starter emergency fund. That's what I would do with it. Next, once you've got that done, baby step 2, are you in debt? Do you have consumer debt at all? Now, this would include student loans, this would include car debt, this would include everything except a mortgage, okay? So with that, do you have any of that? If you are, or if you do have any of that debt, the next thing, the best thing to do with that money is actually to put it on the debt. And this is scary. People are really scared to do this. I was scared to do this, to go down to only $1,000 in cash. And I understand people get a lot of security from cash, get a lot of security from the money sitting there. The reason that we do this is because we really want to see debt as the enemy, and not just see it as the enemy because it steals your future income, it steals your payments going out all the time. But it's more than that. We want to admit to ourselves that we see the debt as the enemy. When you finally decide to throw everything down to that $1,000 at the debt, you are proving to yourself that you really believe that the debt is the enemy. And the difference that I've seen in people I've coached, that I've seen in friends and colleagues and even myself and even our own family, the difference between before doing that and after doing that in your attitude, in the way that you're viewing this whole get out of debt, get control of your money process is just incredible. If you've never done it, I urge you, give it a shot. You could always go back into debt again. If you really do it and then you find out you love debt, go ahead and get yourself a loan and get the money back. But no, I don't think you will. The thought of actually being debt-free faster and seeing that progress and seeing the hope, just absolutely massive. So absolutely urge you that if you've got cash sitting in your account above that $1,000 emergency fund, go ahead and put that on the debt, as much as you can actually do without affecting the way your household runs, right? All right, so that said, now let's assume you're debt-free. Once you're fully debt-free, except the mortgage, of course, next thing is that fully funded emergency fund. So now, what do I do with extra money I have in my account? It becomes your emergency fund. 3 to 6 months of expenses. So figure out what it actually costs to run your home. What are the minimum dollar amounts to run your home and keep it going? Take that number, and depending on what your comfort level is and what your stability of your job and things like this, multiply that number by somewhere between 3 and 6. Choose that as your fully funded emergency fund dollar and use that as just a emergency fund. And don't take all cash to deal with that one thing, that one focused issue. Get that done. Next up, now once you're done baby step 3, things become a lot less about intensity and a lot more about intentionality. This question of now, okay, if I'm now moving forward, I want to accomplish things, I want to be smart with my money, what do I do? So baby step 4, 5, and 6, if you're not familiar, baby step 4 is you're starting to put away 15% of your money into retirement. Baby step 5 is kids' college. and baby step 6 is paying off the house. Now, of course, I guess before that, we would ask the question, well, if I have extra money lying around and I don't have a house yet, then I would go ahead and start building that house down payment fund, right? That's a good place to be. But outside of that, now you're in baby step 4, 5, and 6. You've got the house. What do you do with extra money lying around? Well, at this point, this is when you could spend it on a new car, some new furniture, some improvements around the house. That's completely reasonable at this point of view. At this point, and you've got a solid foundation financially at this point to do it. Don't feel guilty about doing it, right? That money does not need to sit there. If you've got a 3 to 6 month emergency fund separate from the money we're talking about here, you don't need that money there. It's, in fact, having too much of an emergency fund is actually a bad thing. If you've got 9 months or 12 months of an emergency fund, that money is sitting there and you're missing out on the ways you could be using it. Okay, so I definitely want you to keep only 3 to 6 months expenses as your emergency fund and put everything else towards your goals. Now, in baby steps 4, 5, and 6, what could your goals be? Well, baby step 4, there's nothing more to do. 15% of your money into retirement, and that's it. And don't add any more to that. The thing on top of that, and that's regardless of what age you are, by the way. If you're 60, this is still the fastest way towards wealth. Baby step 5 would be the next place I would start looking. If you have a chunk of cash sitting in your bank account and you're not sure what to do with it, one great place to put it is to your kids' college fund. One of the things people like to do is, some people like to do that every month and put the money away. Some people like to just go ahead and do a lump sum. So if, for instance, if you've got a chunk of money sitting in a bank account and your kids are quite young, if you just take that chunk of money and you call that their college fund, even if you don't put it into an RESP quite yet, or maybe you put in the maximum into RESP out of it every single year, either way, just putting it aside, if the kid's young enough, that might, depending on the size of the cash, of course, but that actually might finish off kids' college. Many people do this, where they take one large lump sum of money, put that aside, call it their kids' college fund, and it's done. Because it's going to grow to more than enough by the time they are 18 or 18, 19 years old to be able to use for college. So that is an option. You definitely want to think about that. Again, I would not put it all in at once. I would definitely put it in slowly to make sure you're getting the maximum match from the government. I've got other videos about that you can check out, and I'll put some in the description here. But the bottom line is, you want to be wise about how do you get the most money out of the government for that. After that, certainly, so like I said already, you can go ahead and spend this on your expenses. You can go ahead and buy a car with this, buy a new couch with this. But the other thing is, once you feel like, you know what, your needs are pretty taken care of, you're looking good, that's where baby step 6 comes in. Our goal is to pay off the house. That's our goal. Think about your house payment right now. Just imagine how much more free financially you would be without that house payment right now. How much more free you would be if you had a $0 mortgage, right? Absolutely incredible. It's an amazing feeling. I want to get there very soon. I'm not yet. So at this point, if you feel like, you know what, other stuff's taken care of, you're good off on kids' college, you've got no major expenses right now that this money needs to go to, and you've got extra cash, that's where I'd put it, onto the home. And again, this is the admitting point. You are now admitting it is important to me. It's one thing to admit in voice, in word, to say it's important to pay off the house. It's another thing to take that extra chunk of money and actually put it on the house. Now, of course, be careful with this. Some mortgage companies will have restrictions as to how much you're allowed to put towards the house each year or at what time. So you'll want to get the details there and make sure you do that in a way where you're not going to get fined, or you're not going to experience any punishment of any kind for putting too much on the house. But certainly you want to pay off the house, and you want to do it in a smart way. So that's a great place to go. After that, now what happens if you get into baby step 7? What do you do at that point? You've got a chunk of cash sitting around. You're in baby step 7. Even the house is paid off. You're putting money into retirement. You're maxing out retirement. Where do you put this extra money? And the answer is wherever you want, honestly, but of course, and all along this way, it's been wherever you want. But what you want to do, and the best advice I've heard on this topic, is to set percentages. So what you'd basically say is, okay, every dollar that comes in above what I need for the running of my home and above this whatever number that we've chosen as that's our baseline, any money that comes in above that is extra. And so what you do is you choose what percentage of that money is going to go towards giving, what percentage of that money is going towards extra savings, and what percentage of it is going towards extra spending. Those are the only three things you can do with money. And to be financially healthy, you've got to be doing all three all the time. So to take that money and assign some percentage, and the percentages can be whatever you want. Of course, you'd want to agree with that with your spouse if you're married and decide together what those numbers would be. But it might be 33, 33, 33. It might be 10, 10, 80. But whatever you choose it to be, at least choose it consciously. And that's the big point there. Okay? And all throughout this, I hope it's been clear that consciousness, that intentionality is really the key here, right? Regardless of where you're at, the main principle here is be intentional with that money. The most common thing, unfortunately, in today's culture is that somebody would get a big chunk of money. They're at some point on the baby steps. They get a big chunk of money, maybe from an inheritance or from some sort of windfall, even a lottery win, and it sits in the account and it slowly gets whittled and whittled away. And it always feels like, oh, I've got so much money in there, until you finally look up and realize, oh my gosh, it's 3/4 of the way done. It's gone. And you wonder what happened with it. That's the worst thing you can do, because then at that point you're behaving reactively. You're seeing something, you're saying yes, I'm going to do it. You're behaving impulsively, and these are not things we want to be said about our. We do not want the characteristic of our personal finance life to be impulsiveness. We want to be intentional with that money, especially from a Christian point of view. From a Christian point of view, this is all God's money. And if he's given you that money to manage and put somewhere, you've got a responsibility to make sure it goes to the right spot. You don't want to just accidentally eat it all with eating out and skip the dishes, right? You don't want to accidentally put more on the car than you would have had you been more intentional, or put more towards even a giving opportunity than you would have had you been intentional. Okay, so I hope that brings you some value today. Thanks so much, guys. Again, go check out WePayOffDebt.ca/cash, and you can get there a checklist of other things you could spend this money on that would be real good investments in your personal finance journey as you go forward. Okay, so hopefully you found that useful. Have a good one. We'll talk to you again.